Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com, how to make your own mosaic pins for knife making. Now these mosaic pins can enhance the appearance of almost any knife, whether it's a full tang or not. They're made from a variety of different tubing, pieces of brass or copper tubing. You can also get square tubing, and you can get bar stock in a variety of different sizes. You'll see a lot of different designs on these pins. A lot of them are filled up with different assortments of brass, copper, even aluminum. I happen to like to use wood for the center core of my pins. But basically I'm going to show you today a very easy way of making these mosaic pins. This method and these materials are probably not used by the professional knife maker, but they're perfect for the hobby knife maker, the guy that wants to make an occasional knife. I'm going to use epoxy casting resin, which is available at a local arts and crafts supply. I like it because it's thin, it's easy to suck into the tube completely, it's easy to color just with any oil-based paint. What I'm doing here is I'm just stirring it, mix in that black paint that I added, and then I'm not going to add the hardener yet until I've set up the mosaic pins and I'm ready to go. This is the hardener. I'll add a few drops of that later. You can also regulate how fast you want it to cure based on the amount of hardener that you put in. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up a few of these pins. I like to make a few of them at a time for upcoming knife projects. I inserted the center core there was actually a bamboo cooking skewer. I'm using 1/4-inch diameter brass tubing, which I got at a local arts and crafts. I inserted another square tubing. I really kind of like the way that the square brass tubing looks inside that round tubing. And then here again is the core that goes in that square tubing, and that's just a bamboo cooking skewer. I'm just going to snap that off to size, load the square into the round tubing, and I'm going to do a few of these. Then I'm going to put a piece of 1/4-inch clear tubing. I got this at Home Depot, and I'm going to secure that or just press it right onto that 1/4-inch diameter brass tubing. This is going to work out nicely. 1/4-inch brass pins are very commonly used for knife making. It's an easy hole to drill through the blade material, and in using this vacuum method, it happens to fit perfectly over the little vacuum gun. So once I've mocked up 2 or 3 pins, and I have the tubing in place, and you can see that some of them are more difficult than others to get that tubing on, and that's why I'm using a piece of wood to press against. I didn't sand that tubing smooth after I cut it, and there certainly is a couple sharp edges there. So you want to press on something hard, like a scrap piece of wood. At this point, I'm ready to fill up all the voids in that tubing with the epoxy casting resin. I'm going to use a vacuum gun, a hand pump vacuum gun. This is an automotive pump that's used for brake lines, for clearing air out of brake lines. You can get these online for about $15. Well worth the investment. You can see that because this epoxy casting resin is very thin, it doesn't take much to suck it up into that clear tubing. When you have a good ½ inch of it showing, release the vacuum on that pump, pull out the bottom end from the epoxy casting resin, and then you can quickly cap that bottom end just with a piece of duct tape. You then want to set or pull that tubing off of the vacuum pump and set that aside in the upright position. I just kind of lay them into a plastic cup and let that dry overnight. That gives any additional voids or any air pockets a chance to find its way out of that tubing, to work its way upward. It's important when you're sucking that epoxy casting resin up into the brass tubing that you keep the bottom end submerged. And you don't want to apply a lot of suction. You want to just give it a few minutes and let it suck up nice and slowly so that it fills all of the voids in and around each one of those pieces of tubing. You can always stop that resin from getting at your vacuum gun. there's a little valve on the front right underneath the dial, and you can stop the suction at any point in time. So you want to have enough of that epoxy casting resin showing in the clear tubing. Release the vacuum, cap it with a piece of duct tape, and put the next one into the plastic cup, and let that sit overnight to dry. Now, another method, and this is probably used more often than the epoxy casting resin would be, this is a quick-acting two-part epoxy. It's available at any hardware store. You can do the exact same thing with this two-part epoxy. You can color it the same way. Just use a little bit of modeler's glue, any oil-based, modeler's paint. Any oil-based paint will do. It doesn't take much. Here I'm adding a little bit of blue paint for the coloring on these pins. And you can see it just takes a few drops. The only thing that you have to be concerned about is that this two-part epoxy is much thicker than the epoxy casting resin. So it is harder to suck up into those tubes. You do have to mix it completely. When you're mixing it, you're actually mixing the hardener with that epoxy. So you have very limited time to work. You really only want to be able to do one or two of these. So you only want to mix up, the amount of this glue that you need really to do about one or at the most two pins. Have your pins set up, have the tubing set up, ready to go. Don't use that much pressure, and it takes a little bit more time for that two-part glue to work its way up through that brass tubing and into the clear tubing. But it eventually makes its way, and the end results are basically the same. I'll show you in a minute. And there you go. You start to see the paint, or you start to see the glue coming up into the clear tubing. And then you can release the pressure and disconnect that clear tubing, cap it with duct tape, and place it in your container to dry overnight. Now, once they're dry, the hardest part of this whole project is probably just getting the duct tape off the bottom of the tube. It really is pretty simple to make these things. Just a quick demonstration to show you how hard this epoxy casting resin is. Not a lot of people use this for mosaic pins, but it really is a very good, a very easy method of making them, and it's pretty durable. After the pins have dried for 24 hours, you can cut them off with a hacksaw or a bandsaw. I cut them into 1.5-inch lengths to use on my projects, my knife projects. You will not fully appreciate them until you sand them down a little bit with sandpaper and maybe some emery paper. Make them shiny as they would be on the knife handle. I don't normally do this until they're installed on the knife. But a very easy, very quick method of making nice mosaic pins. You can see this one here has that wood internal core that I was talking about. You can see the end grain of that bamboo. But these mosaic pins can be designed any way you want them, and they really do enhance almost any knife's appearance. Please check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. Be sure to check out our other how-to videos. And if you like this video, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel.